Hello and welcome to today's webcast for Distributed Republic. It's so exciting to see you back. Every time I've done these introductions for the last 3 webcasts, I've gone, and we've smashed the record of how many that we've registered. And this is the same again today. Yes, with Francesca, we have, last time I checked, 788 registrations,
Whoa.
which is the largest amount that we've had. So really excited to have you all here today. Hopefully you're coming from different channels. We're streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And with that exciting number as well, we've also gained 300 members in our community, which is distributedrepublic.xyz. If you want to be able to register, we have a lot of resources. And the whole point of us doing these webcasts is that we want to ensure that communities that can benefit most from the inception of new technologies have access to the resources, education, and expertise to thrive in a digital world. So if you haven't joined us for a webcast before and you want to know what's the format about, how does this all work? So we have a discussion format. What will happen is I'll ask a question, Francesca will give her insights, I'll give my insights, and then we'll move on to the next one. But we also welcome your questions, comments, and feedback, and we'll do our best to get to those at the end. We do our best to minimize jargon as much as possible, but sometimes, particularly when we're talking about these technical things, an occasional word slips out and you might go, hey, what on earth does that mean? Our friends at Cybergear have produced this fantastic AI technology guide that has all these different terms and a glossary to be able to work through. So if you do hear something you're like, I don't know what that means, or that context has been changed a little bit from what I know, that's one of the best ways that we can start off. So on to today's webcast. We are looking at marketing magics. How can you unleash your marketing with the power of AI? My fantastic guest today is Francesca Tabor. Frankie, can you do an introduction for yourself? Because I always feel that a guest will always do themselves the most amount of justice.
Great. So I'm Francesca. I'm from London. I'm pretty multi-hyphenate and a real generalist. I've been in technology for a number of years. In my 20s, I was project managing a team building a social network. I worked at Badoo, at HelloFresh. During COVID-19, I started advising brands in music, sports, and fashion to move into the Metaverse, NFT, and gaming space. Done a bit of motion capture with Move AI, and now my focus area is really on generative AI. So my Web3 digital fashion community has become a generative AI fashion community, and I can talk a little bit about that. And then I'm also, I would say I'm a community builder as you are. So I've been building communities online, organizing events online, and now kind of moving into the real world. So I've got a conference coming up in June at Tobacco Docks during London Tech Week, focused on generative AI in the media, marketing, and creative space.
Amazing. And yeah, do tell us more about your generative AI fashion community as well.
Yes. So we've got 20,000 people in LinkedIn and 200 in Discord. What we do is we do weekly competitions, and it's great fun. It's incredibly creative. It's a bit like being a sort of director or creative director coming up with themes. And when it comes to fashion, it's not just the clothes, it's also the models and the avatars, the background, and the environments. And we're currently looking at building a tool that will speed up the process of creating fashion. So sort of Canva for fashion. And obviously Canva is another really good female-founded company. So it's always been an inspiration for me. So we're looking at supporting the creator economy and also making fashion more sustainable. So trying to tackle quite a few problems in the fashion industry, but I've always been pro sustainability. Hopefully we can make a big difference there.
Amazing. Yeah, I think where we have quite a lot of synergy is this whole idea of the digital convergence, that you don't want to just look at these things in isolation. You have to see how they all connect together, particularly when we're looking at Web3, the Metaverse and AI. Is yes, they have their individual inventions and innovations with it, but there's so much where they're interconnected, and hopefully we'll explore that a little bit more on this webcast. So first question, what are the key ways that AI is transforming the marketing industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So AI is a really broad area of technology. So I'll try and make it as focused as possible, and I won't cover every single area. But I would say that generative AI is a new form of AI which generates media, whether it's text, image, video, 3D for games, for movies and animation. So that is incredibly exciting. It also has its cons, because if these tools are so freely available, will all of our content become homogenous and the same? So you have to keep your brand and your voice alive and kicking, and to stand out in the market. So that's one area. The second area is to do with data analysis. As human beings, we're quite good at statistics and analyzing trends. But when you are hit with data from all different angles, and as we start recording more and more touch points, it's just going to become so noisy and difficult to drive insights. So that's where AI can really help to unpick some of these outlier situations, and get even more depth out of your data. And help you with forecasting. If you look at recommendation engines like Netflix or Amazon, the reason why they are leaders is because they have so much data on their customers, and they can really deliver what customers are looking for, improving their products, their services. Every single element of their business can change through data, and having that feedback loop. And then the last part is to do with avatars. We will start to see more and more avatars that are as famous as the celebrities that we follow and the influencers that we follow. The thing about avatars is they don't age. So unfortunately, influencers might hit their peak in their 20s, and then suddenly they're in their 30s, and they don't want to do the same things anymore. So they transition out of a specific phase. Whereas, you can bring an old celebrity back to life, Marilyn Monroe, Frank Sinatra, or you can create completely new personalities that really represent brands. And it's great to have images. But through AI, you can now use narrative and conversational AI to give a voice to those avatars and actually have a conversation with them in real time, which will probably be different for you as anyone else who's having a conversation with that avatar. So they probably can have 300 conversations at the same time, which makes them really superhuman, and in different languages. So we can't compete.
Amazing. It's oh God, there's so many different touch points I want to go through from the points that you raised. I think one of them around what is real. That's what we're really looking at when it comes to AI and interactions. What does a meaningful interaction count as? From a marketing perspective, even if we're looking at those interactions with chatbots and the connection that people have with them and being able to use them for data. And yes, from our business perspective and being able to connect with our customers, fantastic. But it is going to really touch on that concept of phygital, where we're looking at that erosion between our physical and our virtual worlds, and how they're going to come to a place where they're almost indistinguishable from each other. And it's interesting you brought up Canva as well, particularly at the beginning of this conversation, because from a marketing perspective, some of their newly released AI tools are absolutely phenomenal. If you're an individual and you're looking at marketing, you can look at how generative AI is being utilized in Canva. So you're able to put in things like a subject matter, and it will generate the carousels and everything for your LinkedIn or for Instagram, and do those designs based on whatever branding you've put in. So you can really generate a lot of content in a very short space of time. But I thought some amazing points there. Hopefully we'll dig into a few more as we go through, because I could have literally responded to that for the rest of the webcast. But I think we should go into some other questions as well. So how are marketers using AI to understand and anticipate behavior? I think this goes into a lot of what you were saying on the analytics aspect of marketing.
Yeah. So just to unpick this question a little bit, everyone thinks that marketers, they only focus on customers. But I would go a little bit further and say that marketers have to look at every single individual that interacts with the brand. So that's, employees are one, customers who are buying a product are another. You've got influencers who will not only use your product but shout about it. And then you've got the community at large. So for example, if you look at Shopify, they will have developers who build apps on top of Shopify. They're not necessarily buying various services, but they're part of the community. They might be creating educational content. So I think it's really important for marketeers to move beyond just looking at, is this person going to buy from me? And to move into more kind of community driven or partnership driven approach, where it's what value can I give back to the customer? How can I educate them? We're in generative AI, we're all learning together, no one's an expert, so it's giving back, learning, teaching, having that open conversation and dialogue all the time. In terms of customers and tracking that, there are the obvious things. If it's an online e-commerce store, it's click-through rates. It's also, if you look at the little camera at the top of your screen, that camera is on a lot of sites recording people's gaze as they gaze across a website. And I've done some work in that to see if a child had autism or not, based on how they reacted to patterns and crazy things going on here versus human faces. So there's a lot that you can gauge from gaze. That facial expression, how dilated a pupil is, can show you how excited someone is. Obviously, if they're in the middle of a game and they're fully immersed, they're going to be really engaged. And that's why marketeers more and more are moving also beyond e-commerce into the game and metaverse world. And I would say that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of tracking data in the metaverse and in games. So more and more data will come from that. For influencers, it's about looking at paid influencers. Obviously you'll want to find people who have a good YouTube following and social media following, but then who are your organic influencers? Can you use computer vision to look at people's social media and identify, okay, there's a Coca-Cola brand there, or there's another product, and based on that, those are potentially some really interesting influencers for you. And then the community side of things, again, you have to look at all of the different channels that exist, the traditional ones, but now you've got more and more community platforms, Discord, Telegram, and tracking data in terms of how engaged is that community member? Are they on different channels? Are they engaging? Are they liking? Are they having individual, conversations? And really trying to drive that and seeing, are they a passive community member or are they actively engaging? And are they going one step further and teaching other people and sort of mentoring them? And that's what you want to create in a community. You want to have as much as engagement and collaboration and education, as well as some of the sort of exciting elements of competitions. But you don't want too much of a competitive environment, because otherwise everyone's vying for themselves. And it's very difficult to track, everyone's interactions. And that's where AI comes in to understand all of that complexity of behavior, and to help you segment your customers.
I've got my notebook out, Francesca, because there's so many good points here that I'm not going to remember how to respond to all of them if I don't write them down. So love the idea when you were talking about, AI really giving that personalized experience. When you're looking at marketing, being able to really design something around the customer based on the data that you have. And as our digital footprints are continuing to expand at such a phenomenal rate, even to the point, if you're looking at attitude changes, over 70% of consumers now rate their digital identity equal to that or greater to their traditional identity, which once again gives us so much information from an AI perspective of us realizing how valuable those digital identities are, and the changing landscape of how we like to purchase things as well, particularly from a Gen Z millennial kind of aspect, but definitely a growing area generally. Also tying in with these Web3 elements, which is fansumerism. People want to buy and sell products from the people that they're fans of and the communities that they're fans of. And that really changes the dynamics of us. Instead of just selling to individuals anymore, or trying to go, we're the brand, you want to be part of our brand, but going, no, you want to be part of our community. We want people to feel that they have a stake in it, a value proposition to help you to expand that marketing. And AI is obviously fantastic for bolstering that reach. I mean, I utilize it a lot for AI and automation paired together, to mean that I can do a lot without having to do a lot. I can make sure that I can go to all social platforms, format it automatically without having to sit there and go through each individual post. And even how we're measuring things. Yeah, sorry, go for it.
No, and just to add to that, again, it's a mindset shift from, brands were, aspirational. You have to buy this product to be the perfect mom, or to be, to have that lifestyle. And now everything is changing and being community driven and creator driven. So, you have people using Midjourney to create new Nike lines. And at this stage, brands are still very protective, and they might, file class action against Midjourney. But eventually the tide will change, and they'll say, actually, those creators are creating some really cool designs. Why not create, 150 limited edition pieces for that 13-year-old, and to highlight, they are the trendsetters. So, and we see the same thing with movies as well, and fandom, in terms of, fans writing scripts, developing different characters, different plots. So it's not that linear story anymore. It's very complex. But being a brand in the future will be being able to host all of those conversations and keep all of the community members happy and listening to them, as much as dictating to them what we think you should buy and what you should do.
Definitely. And I think there's so many massive points in there that are really useful for that personalized experience. But going back to kind of what you were saying around, web camera and analyzing, people's interactions, that's going to be so important for metaverse environments. And Elena, who's been on the webcast before, from NeuroXR, she does a lot of how you can read people's emotions in virtual environments. And that will basically become the new way of looking at a website. If you think about your metaverse spaces and using AI within it to be able to measure, what do people spend their time looking at? What's the emotional reaction to it? We can measure it in so much more of a neurological basis, rather than just making assumptions based on where people click. But I think we do realize how much of an influence that's had. So, which leads me quite nicely into our next question, which is, how can marketers integrate AI into their current marketing strategies? And it says here, without disrupting their process, but I feel like maybe that's something that people need to accept as part of the process. But I welcome your thoughts.
Yeah, so I would say that marketing automation is probably the first thing that you would be looking at doing. So doing an audit of all of the people in your organization, on the marketing side. What are all of their roles and responsibilities? How long does each of those tasks take? What is actually driving revenue? And then looking at what's repeatable and what's just taking precious time and cognition away from what they should be doing in terms of being creative and thinking of new strategies, or delivering amazing customer service. And then the next thing to audit would be all of the tools that you use. How often do you use them? Do you use all of the features? How much does it cost? There'll be so many tools that you use that you pay for that you never use. And for a small business, I would describe that as death by 1,000 cuts. So you don't want to be a leaky bucket. And unfortunately, a lot of people even in the generative AI space will post, these are the 100 new tools that you need to use, whereas there are maybe 1, 2, 3 top tools, and everything else is just noise. And built on the original tools to begin with. So focus on the most important tools, and then do Pareto analysis in terms of, 20% of your activity is going to be driving 80% of your revenue. So what can you start to cut out? What can you start to automate? Bring someone in who can help automate those tasks, which will be integrating the tools together. And then create, the process documentation. train everyone within your organization, help onboard new people and train them up. And hire people who are willing to learn. I think that would be a key thing for someone who's hiring. Are these people stuck in a certain process, or are they open to learning, teaching? And you need to harness those sorts of people. The next thing I would do is to really focus in on the brand. What are your brand assets? Visually, also in terms of content, what's the style, your sort of tone of voice? Develop that as far as you can so that if your employees are using ChatGPT, they're not going to sound like every single other of your competitors. You're really going to stand out in the market. And what you can do as well is you can weight things. So brand is really about values. So if you were to get all of your employees into a room to brainstorm, put little sticky notes on the wall in terms of your values, then prioritize those. And again, you can weight that and add that into any generative AI tool. And then the last part is to do with the psychological aspect of people's fears and their sort of sense of boundaries and feeling of control in a job. Ultimately, people want to know that their jobs are secure. So you need to alleviate those fears. And you need to give them control over the speed at which you're going to transform and give them transparency into that roadmap for the next week, 3 months, a year, 2 years, and revisit that.
Amazing. Such good advice, Francesca. I love it. We've got, I know we're not going to get through all of our questions today, but I think we're answering a lot of them as we're going through. So first of all, kind of that cost aspect and really reducing, the whole point of AI is to, anything that you can make repetitive, we can turn into either an AI system that you develop yourself, or there'll be an AI out there. But there is so much noise at the moment and people are feeling so overwhelmed and they're like, where have all these come from? And I think that, there are some real gems out there, but there is also a lot of inflated systems. The other thing from a cost perspective is, a lot of building these tools and building your own things on the back end of it can be quite cheap. Using something like ChatGPT, as it for each inquiry costs 1/10 of a cent on an average kind of bit. So you can always build those into your own chatbots, to your own systems, to your own processes, to your own marketing, particularly if it's repetitive. And I think that idea of identifying what's repetitive is the key to AI marketing, and particularly to automation. So I automate 20 business processes for my marketing. On average, that completes 750 tasks for me every month. If each one of those tasks would have taken me 5 minutes, that's 61 hours that it saved me every month. And I can do that automation for about 15 quid a month with Zapier. So you can see that there's so much that you can do to save time, to spend it on the things that you find more meaningful. And just some last kind of touches on the workforce bit, which I think is probably the biggest concerns that people are talking about, and particularly from marketing copywriters that already know that AI is probably a biggest threat to them more than anyone else in this particular moment in time. But the most recruitable skill over the last 6 months has become ability to use ChatGPT, which I think goes to show the changing job market. There is an anecdote in all the communities that we're a part of, which is your job won't be taken by AI, but it might be taken by somebody who knows AI. So that reskilling, bringing your workforce up to speed, helping on that education is good for your organization, but it's good for their employability, their skills, their opportunities as well. And there will be a huge disruption. Goldman Sachs released a report that 25% of the workforce are going to be disrupted, displaced by 2030, which is about 300 million jobs worldwide. Massive amounts of disruption there. So it is about evolving your business as well. There'll be 40% of, I think I read the other day that 40% of businesses probably won't survive the next 10 years if they don't evolve with the growing technologies that are there. And I love that you touched on not just having the strategy from a technological perspective, but a change management perspective as well, because we have to think about the human psychological process of change and adapting to change. And if we're really looking at supporting our organizations through this incredible kind of fourth revolution, industrial revolution, then we really need to think about how do we support them on that journey of gaining skills, feeling comfortable and adapting to the new world. So just love all of your points on that one.
And just to add to that, using weekends or time outside of the sort of traditional working week to hold things like, you might have team building, but you could have hackathons or creatathons. If you basically teach people to use these new tools, but in a very playful way where it's not about hitting KPIs and OKRs, people will feel less resistant to trying something new and failing, because the whole point of learning is you're failing. And I always think of that robot that's teaching itself to run and do flips. It will fall over, it learns, that's what the machine learning part is, and then it will do it 5 times better than a human does. And that's what stops us from evolving, because we're just scared of tripping and being that toddler that is finding its way. And we just need to also be very open to each other failing and their weaknesses and their fears. And so I think, again, that's the psychological part, just being compassionate and understanding and supportive.
Because I can see we've got a lot of comments going through, and what I'm going to do is going to ask another question, but I do welcome you to put any of your questions and comments in there. We're going to go through, even if it's just short answers, and do as much as we can. But while we're waiting for people to add in their comments, there's a bit of a delay. We're 1 minute ahead of you, so start putting them in now. What are, for small businesses and startups on a tight budget, what would be your advice for starting and leveraging AI in their marketing efforts?
For people on a tight budget, I think there are a lot of free tools out there, so you can start up with these tools and try them out. There's a lot of free educational materials. I would say, again, community is key. So joining any communities that are providing educational materials, from AICC to, there are all sorts of communities out there on Discord, and there's some, or on LinkedIn. And then if you don't find the content that you're looking for, you can start to crowdsource it and build your own community and invite experts in and do what we're doing effectively today. And that's a great way of pushing things forward.
Love it. Start your own revolution and cut out the middleman is what I heard from that.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Let's look at some of the questions that we have here. So first of all, we've got some amazing comments. Thank you so much for people that are rejoining the card. Useful session, loads of really positive statements coming through. But let's go to our first question, which is, what do you think about generative AI for digital marketing?
For digital marketing, I think it's a great tool for creating. I'll give you two examples of something that I do. So I use Google Alerts for a topic that I follow and I'm trying to be a thought leader in, to get all of the news. And then I use ChatGPT to then summarize the news, and then I can create a newsletter from that. It is very dry, so I can definitely do some work in terms of the tone of voice and things like that. So that's one area. And then in terms of having my own fashion community, having weekly competitions, we're creating a lot of content. That content we can then put on social media, on a website, do a magazine, with obviously the creator's permission. And that's a key part of any content created by a creator, understanding IP from the creator standpoint, also from the actual tool that was used. So if they're using Midjourney, understanding the terms and conditions of Midjourney, the different licenses, it gets quite complex. However, once you've got that community, they're helping with creating that content.
Perfect. I mean, a good example of how I do a similar kind of thing. Take a news article. What I do is write my thoughts on it, and then I put it through ChatGPT with a script that says, hey, these are the best practices for a great LinkedIn post. Adapt my content to be able to match that. So what your thoughts are, and you just use it to tidy up, catch anything that you might have missed, or reformat it. So I think this is something that people often get bogged down on, is going, they try to just get an AI to create everything. It's like, no, you can utilize it to format your own thoughts, particularly as someone who's dyslexic as well. Use it as a way to be able to communicate what you want to be able to do, and maybe communicate better. but don't leave it to do all of the work. Another question we've got here, which is, so we've got people that are, if people are looking for analytics within their organization, what is the application of generative AI in the metaverse?
So as I mentioned before, the metaverse is still being built, and we still have quite a long way to go. I look at the metaverse from a standpoint of social network. So as a 3D version of a social network. So everything that you would expect in a social network, you should also have in the 3D world. So you should have e-commerce in the forms of virtual stores. You should have events, live events, whether that's music or sport. And then the way it's designed, it needs to be designed like an urban planner. I think one of the best designers of spaces was actually Disney with his theme park. So what he would do is he would put the castle right at the center on a hill. So you wouldn't have signposts saying you should go here, you should go there. It was this wheel where you had the castle in the middle, and then various rides, and it was just very easy to navigate. So I think one of the key skills for the metaverse will be being an urban planner, but then building out all of the data infrastructure in terms of being able to have your avatar in the metaverse while you're asleep, walking around, living their life, going to the gym, buying things like Monopoly. These experiences will evolve over time, and it'll be really interesting to see how our avatars are autonomous without us.
Perfect. So time for probably two very quick answers to questions. So this is the first one, just in a sentence, a little bit about B2B marketing and generative AI.
B2B marketing, I think it's all about thought leadership. So again, understanding what's in the news, social media listening.
Perfect. And how fast can AI influence the highest potential extended reality? And I want to just add on to this as well. Being able to use generative AI to help you with metaverse assets is phenomenal. I use generative AI to help me with skyboxes when I'm designing metaverse spaces, something that previously would have taken so long, so much effort, so much energy, so much expertise can now be done in seconds. So just one little thing to add on it. But yes, how do you see it?
Extended reality. So I see that as the metaverse coming into the physical world. Really excited about retail spaces having full 360 audio visual. So LED screens on the walls, 360 sound. They'll have to bring in content into those spaces. And eventually that will be AI generated content. So if you're in a spa, and you walk in the morning, it will create content for a spa in the morning, and then midday or in the evening, and it will just do that automatically without any creator. And so I'm looking forward to that stage in generative AI development.
Francesca, thank you so much for your time, energy, thoughts. Really useful. I hope we've got so many positive comments on our channels that just really appreciative. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk on this.
No worries.
Yeah, it's really useful conversation. And the whole point of us doing this is to make sure that everybody can participate in this conversation. The best place to start was yesterday. The next best place is today. So let's get that conversation going. If you're looking to be able to find out more resources on this kind of stuff, go to distributedrepublic.xyz or start following us. And if your organization is interested in implementing any of these technologies, you can get in contact with myself. You can get in contact with Francesca. Francesca, you've got conference coming up as well. So if you just want to spend 10 seconds giving us a little bit of a highlight on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So 14th and 15th of June in London, please do come along. So first day is focused on the creative industry, so generative AI and fashion and film, music, gaming, how brands can start to implement this. And then the second day is more on the legal and regulatory side of things, so AI ethics, IP, and some of those, psychological questions or societal questions that we're all having, because AI is going to be so transformative, and how can we, adapt to the changes that are coming.
I was speaking at the last one. I absolutely loved it. So it was such a good conversation. And your next one's at the Tobacco Dock. So it'd be fantastic to see people there and start this conversation. But
3,500 people will be there. So it's going to be a great time to be in London. It's London Tech Week, loads of other tech events happening. So come check it out.
Phenomenal. Sounds very exciting. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Francesca. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll catch you at the next Distributed Republic webcast.
Bye-bye.